Hey, WELWelt.com and Chronicle Telegram fans. It is Rocco Nuosci here with another episode of the Hey Coach podcast. As we'll head to Columbia Station this week. You see him on your screen there. It's head coach of the Columbia Raider football program. That's Mike Rice. And he joins us again for this week's Hey Coach podcast. Coach, greatly appreciate you taking the time out of a busy week. I know you guys got a game tomorrow night that you're preparing for. So certainly appreciate the time. And, I want to start with this. Coming to Columbia, I went back and reread the Chronicle Telegram article about you when you got hired following Jason Ward after he stepped down as the head coach of the program. You took a teaching job however many years ago over there at Columbia. So I'm curious, what was it about the Raider community that really drew you there to Columbia, and why has that felt like home for you over there?
Yeah. So first, let me just say thanks. This is pretty cool, and I'm excited to be on here. Thanks for doing this and all that you do. But to answer your question, I taught a long time in another district, and I just but I had the opportunity to come over and coach here at Columbia for about, I want to say about 7 years, 7, 8 years, something like that with Jason. And then a teaching job opened up in math, my field, and you know, it's hard to explain, but people throw the word culture around, and what does that really mean? Uh, Whatever it is, Columbia has it, and Columbia has the community support, the administrative support, the belief in each other and the support of each other, that not every place has, and it was just such a cool thing to be a part of, and I was only a part of it in the coaching realm, and I was always a little envious of the teaching realm, and the little bit that I got to interact with some of the teachers in the district. And I come from a small school background, and I love the small school feel. And so it just felt like a good fit for me too, which was a huge thing. So
it- let's stick with that for a second. That whole, the small school community. You're a Fairview grad, if I'm not mistaken, right?
yes. Yep.
Okay, so I live in Fairview now, so I understand all about, the kind of small town vibe over there that they got going, right? You guys certainly have it at Columbia. Talk to me if you can just about maybe not the extra work, maybe that's not the right way to phrase it, but it really takes everybody, especially within these smaller communities, to make, not only Friday nights over there at Columbia special, but you go to a volleyball game, you go to a boys soccer game, you go to any Columbia Raiders sporting event and they've got fans, bursting out the gym, off the field, whatever. I mean, you guys show up over there for all of your sports teams and you're loud, you're passionate. The fellow students show up. There's always a student section. What all needs to go into that, to make the community and that whole sports scene over there just so special?
Well, I think that starts from the top, and I think that from the 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 board members to our great superintendent, Mr. Bancic. That's something that they preach, and they model for our kids and our staff. And I think it just has become an expectations that we're going to go support each other. And we do team dinners on Thursday nights, but it's important, and everybody knows that we got to get out of team dinner to go to that volleyball game, or to go to support our other sports, because they support us on Friday nights. And it's the kids enjoy it. The kids, it's something they look forward to in addition to being involved in their own sport. And they're to be supportive of others. It's something we preach. It's something I try and preach within the football program, doing for others, and supporting each other in that way. And yeah, we may not have the numbers other schools have, but we do come out in the numbers that we have, and it's it is impressive even still to me. What is it, 5 years later of being in the building? It's still impressive to me, and it's still an honor to be a part of.
Awesome, awesome. Circling back to you as a football coach, I again rereading that Chronicle article. I know you had a couple of different spots. Sort of started at Fairview for you, right? EC, you were over at Berea for a while. Were you always? Because I know you were defensive coordinator there at Columbia before taking over as head coach. Was it always a defensive role you've had with coaching staffs?
No, no, I started on the offensive side.
Mm.
Back at Fairview, that was kind of my main focus. When I first started, you're just a position coach and you're just kind of learning and mastering. You're starting to learn the craft of what you're trying to do and figuring out who you are. And I worked on both sides of the ball, obviously at Fairview because smaller coaching staffs. And then I had a chance to go to Elyria Catholic and basically it was a 1 year thing where I was kind of in between jobs and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do next. And Dave McFarland let me come over there and man, did I learn a lot from that guy in that 1 year and his staff. It was a great staff to be a part of. And really what I took into being a defensive coordinator, I learned from Coach Dan DeRazio over there at that year at Elyria Catholic, um, and from Dave but I was still really offensive focused. And then the following year I a job at Berea opened where I was teaching with a coaching staff change and I was mainly an offensive coach there for the first few years. And then our defensive coordinator left to take a head coaching job, and I kind of was like, I think I'm ready for this. I think I'm ready for that next phase of my career and taking on a little bit more responsibility. And I was hired to do that at Berea for a few years. And then we merged, and then I ended up over here at Columbia and took the defensive side of the ball uh, to that next level. But so it was kind of 50-50 before I was a head coach.
Yeah. What, you said that, something you had just sort of felt like you were ready to take that next step. Why did you feel that? Was it just comfort with what you had been doing up until that point, or just walk me through that? What made you feel like you were ready? Because now here you are as the head coach of one of the most successful high school programs in our area.
Well, I think, early on, I might circle around your question here a little bit, but I
That's
think
okay.
early on, I wanted to be a head coach, right? Like you get into the profession, yeah, I start coaching, and my goal immediately, I want to be a head coach, right? And the more and more you do it, the more and more you're like, man, I'm not quite ready to be a head coach. I'm glad I'm not a head coach, and but I work I one thing I tried to do was always just keep working and keep studying and keep learning. And I'd go to as many clinics as I could go to. I'd talk to as many coaches as I could talk to. And you don't know what you don't know. But at some point you feel like, all right, I may not be ready to be a head coach, but I am. I feel like I'm the guy on the staff that can run this ship of the defense or the offense, and that's kind of how I felt when our defensive coordinator left. I felt like, you know, I, I'm ready to move on from just a position coach and try and coordinate a whole entire unit. And it worked out. There was a lot of good, there was a lot of bad, and a lot I look back on and say, man, I really didn't know some of what I didn't know, and you learn from it. And the next time I got my shot was here at Columbia, and I was more prepared after kind of going through it, going back to being a position coach, and then I got another crack at being a coordinator, and I was more prepared that second time around.
Obviously, you were coordinator under Jason Ward for a number of years over there. And I know we've talked in the past about you and Jason's relationship, but if we could rehash that here, talk to me about that relationship with Jason Ward and kind of maybe even still to this day, what him and his influence has meant to you now as head coach.
I tried to. I've worked for a lot of different head coaches, and I've tried to take a little bit from everyone that I coach with, really. But what I learned from him as far as managing a program and inspiring a program and the kids in that program and the coaches in that program. I can't even describe what I learned, and um, he remains a mentor and a great friend to this day, and I love working with him and for him as my athletic director. Um, and we've become such great friends, and it really started on the first phone call we ever had. I responded to an email of his and said, heck yeah, I'm interested in a job that he had open. And I think he's come and told me the same. Like, I could just tell I was going to get along with this guy. We had similar backgrounds, even from growing up in households that felt the same, to our dads being the same. Some of the stories we have it's like carbon copies of each other. So yeah, and then, and then we're both passionate about the same things as far as, our students here and our community, and trying to make it a better place.
Maybe not so friendly as on Sundays, right? With him and his
Yeah.
Steelers fandom, right?
No, correct. Go Browns.
Yeah. Had to sneak that in there. I'm sure Jason will get a laugh out of that watching this. Looking at this football season, I guess starting with this, because I want to talk about your defense, and obviously that's just a complete strong point for you guys right now. But getting that opening win over Fairview, right? You being a Fairview guy, I know they got you guys last year. How did that feel? Kind of getting maybe not revenge this year, but getting the better of those guys this time around.
Well, I'll tell you, it felt great, and all that other stuff. Yeah, sure, you could spin it that way, but really, why it felt great is because I think they're a really good football team, and
Mhm.
and to go beat a well coached and a good football team with some good players on that team is what really felt great about it. Because they did get us last year, and I felt like we ended up being a pretty good team last year, and I think they were as well. So knowing that going into that game, it was a fun week to prepare for. Our kids did great all week in preparing, and to pull out a win in a big game like that, it feels great.
When you guys have pitched what, 2 shutouts this season, if I'm not
Yeah, our
mistaken? That's
defense, man, they are. Coach Booker's got them going. He's got them prepared. They're practicing hard. They know what they're looking for, and they're flying around. And I can't say enough about our seniors that are Carter Dooley on the back end, and Jose Rivera up at the linebacker level. They're doing a great job, and then we're getting some great play from some young guys in there. So I can't say enough about the defense, setting up
uh,
scores galore.
yeah, well, and the offense is clicking too, right? With Logan Mangy. I've read, your words about him. We talked about him last year when he took over at quarterback. Seems like his decision making is kind of taking a big step forward now this season for you guys.
Absolutely, he's really stepped his game up. Um, because he understands a little bit more. We're able to put a little more on his plate now, where last year we kind of held back a little bit, just making sure he understood the basics, and because he didn't come up as a quarterback, he came up as a receiver, and so switching him over once we switched the offensive scheme over. It took a little bit of time, and it's still a work in progress, and we're
Sure.
still at, working to advance it even more.
Two quick ones for you because I know I don't want to keep you forever, Coach. I guess just sticking with this year's team in and of itself. I know last year Keystone returned to the top as Lorain County League champions. I'm sure you guys certainly view yourself in the race, in the hunt, very much for that once again this season. How do you kind of see the LCA playing out? I know none of you guys ever like to look ahead as coaches, and I would never ask you to, but just kind of entering conference play now this week, I'm sure you consider yourselves right there at the top of the contenders in that conference.
Yeah, I mean, we're focused on Wellington this week, and we want to go 1-0 this week. And obviously, at the beginning of the year, if you were to ask me that question, I'm going to tell you we want to be up there at the top, and we want to win the conference. And I'm not going to shy away from that. I'm not,
Yeah.
yes, and if Keystone's the team that won it last year, and they're the team to beat, then but. worrying about beating Keystone at this point, it does us no good. So we gotta beat Wellington and every other team before we get to that game, um, to give ourselves a shot. So that's what we're gonna stay focused on and continuing to get better as a team and as a unit.
There you go. That's a true coach's answer right there. A veteran of the head coaching game already, huh? And we can end with this, coach. Just again, speaking of being the head coach, and again, this is something we asked you, I'm sure, in your first season over there. But now that you're a little deeper into the trenches over there, so to speak, have you felt that you've kind of maybe put your own personal touch on the program? Really feel like you've kind of made it into your own? Obviously, with what Jason had going, you were a part of that. So, I'm sure there's not some crazy drastic change in philosophy, but have you been able to kind of put your own stamp on the program now, you feel?
I think so. And I think it started from day one. One of the great things about a great person and human being like Jason is, there was never any expectation that it was going to be what he left. And he didn't ever say anything to me or even make me feel a certain way about having to do it his way or keep things going. But I will say that I think there's value in tradition. I'm a huge Ohio State fan, for example, and there's great tradition that's bigger than say an Urban Meyer or a Jim Tressel or any of those guys. And it's not their place to take some of those traditions away. And I felt the same way coming in here. I want to keep the great traditions that are here, that are bigger than me, that are bigger than the current look of the Columbia Raiders, that encompass the Columbia Raiders forever, and keep those great traditions, and then put my stamp on how I want our program to look currently, obviously. So there's a fine balance in those two things, and I think we've done a good job keeping the great traditions that need to be kept, and then building upon and some of the other things that we want to raise the bar in a sense, with moving forward.
Well, I was there for the regular season finale last year against Black River, where you pull out the win, you light off fireworks that rivaled, what the Guardians could put up on a weekend. So the tradition and the culture is certainly there. And as far as the current look, you guys are heading into conference play 3-0 with 2 shutouts under your belt. So I think you're doing good
Yeah,
on both fronts there, coach. So um,
I
yeah,
appreciate
so
it. Thank you.
yeah. No, thank you, coach. And yeah, we can close with that. So thank you again very much for joining us here on the Hey Coach podcast, coach. You've quickly become one of my favorites to talk to throughout the football season here in Lorain County. So greatly appreciate the time, and best of luck to you and the Raiders as this season marches on. I'm sure we'll be catching up on a Saturday morning a couple more times here this year.
Well, I appreciate it, Rocco. Appreciate everything, man. Thank you.